Is there a sort of majority opinion in Silicon Valley on the part of people who know a lot about what's at the heart of NSA in terms of the computer science that enables them to do this, about whether NSA has gone too far?
So I have
or there's an invasion of privacy, because privacy comes up all the time, as you know, beyond NSA.
So I can't speak for Silicon Valley because I actually have a slightly different view of that specific issue, largely having to do with my immigrant origins. I am probably uncharacteristically pro national security agencies writ large, and NSA in particular, despite the fact that they would not hire me at some point. I actually wanted to work for the NSA, and I was not a U.S. citizen, and that sort of ended right there. But I really value my privacy, and I really value the government not knowing more than they absolutely must about me. But I also fundamentally believe that this country in particular so far has its citizenry's interests in mind that I just fundamentally trust the national security establishment to care about the citizens, to spy on the things that need spying. National Security Agency is there to make sure we don't have another September 11th. And I think that's probably, it's a trade, but it's a trade I would be willing to make. I realize it's not a very popular
trade
opinion.
between security and liberty.
Security and privacy.
Privacy. Yeah.
I think it's very important to understand that these people do the sort of things that may seem unpleasant and intrusive and controversial, but they're ultimately protecting us. And I value that
so
protection.
therefore, in the interest of protection, you do not think they have gone too far in the invasion of privacy based on what we know now and based on what we've learned from Edward Snowden and others.
To be completely honest, I haven't followed the exact details as carefully as I perhaps should to make that opinion. I'm speaking more about the broader sense of this trade, privacy for security. I think national security is just not to be trifled with. We've seen what happened on September 11th, and I think people who forget that are fooling themselves.
Yeah, and people in Europe, in many parts of Europe, have seen the savage consequences of war.
Exactly. I just think that any form of chest beating about that is at the very least forgetting our very recent past.
The other side of that is because of technology today, you know, and the government, not only technology acting alone, first of all, you know, in terms of advertising, commercial interest and all that, as well as, you know, the government coming to technology companies and saying, we need to know what you know.
I think that is a separate issue, and it's a very important one. I think what's critical is the companies need to be transparent with their user base. Users have to understand that the rules of the game are defined in a certain way. And I think companies not being able to disclose to their user base what the government gets to find out from them is an issue that's worth debating and is worth highlighting. But I think the government working with the private sector is a great thing. When we were working on security and anti-fraud measures at PayPal, we collaborated with every imaginable 3- and 4-letter agency, and those were some of the best, most productive relationships I've had as a business person, because you see, and it's also where I gained a lot of my respect and views on this matter. These people don't get paid a lot of money to make sure we don't get ripped off, to make sure we don't get killed, to make sure we don't get bombed. You have to appreciate that. They're doing this not because there's a lot of money in there or their names don't get mentioned. They're sort of everyday heroes, and they don't think twice about doing it. So I think if a private sector can help them, we should.
In the area of technology and hacking, we assume the Chinese are doing a lot of it, and whether it's government-sponsored or however it might, or the Red Army is doing it, or whoever is doing it. There's also an assumption, I think, upon many people that we're doing a whole bunch of it ourselves. The U.S. government, well, I mean, some of this has come out in some of the things that are released. Now, it may be different, and you can spell out the differences. My question is anybody ahead of the game on that? Are we better than they are? Or is the aspect of always hackers are one step beyond of how you can stop them?
The thing that's,
two questions. But
the thing about security is that offense and defense are not different. at least in my view of the issue, there's always everybody uses pretty self-similar systems. Everybody's running more or less the same kind of technology. Knowing what's vulnerable, how to exploit the vulnerabilities, figuring out how to get into a system, how to turn off the power grid, how to spin the centrifuges a little bit faster, is as much offensive as it is defensive. And so, one, if I had to place bets, I would say we, as in the United States, is probably the strongest. I certainly cannot speak
privately and publicly, meaning working for the government and working outside the government.
Yes, but I think specifically working for the U.S. government, I think the U.S. offensive capabilities are excellent.
Let me talk about two of your companies, one which I find fascinating. One is a firm. Tell me what that is.
So, a slight departure from a firm, but I'll get to it in